Hi, everyone. This is Aaron Henney, Artistic Director of Theater Dybbuk, and great to be with you for our bi-weekly chats here on Facebook. A couple things before we dive in. One is I'm here with our marketing director, Julie Lockhart, who at a certain point will say, please ask us questions, and she'll be here to let me know what questions are coming in. So say hi, Julie.
Hi.
So, um, for those who have been watching these talks regularly, as you probably know, we've over the course of the last 7 or so months have done a variety of conversations, everything from me speaking directly about art and some issues that come up in our work, to conversations with colleagues and fellow artists, to trainings that we have done internally with Theater Dybbuk that we make available to you, the public. And we decided that here we are about 7 months in since the shelter at home place was put in place here in Los Angeles, where we're based. And we thought it was just time to check back in. It's been quite a while since I spoke to you directly about Theater Dybbuk and what we're up to. And so the next 20, 30 minutes is going to be about me sharing with you what we're doing as a company, the pivots we've made over the last 7 months, and where we're headed, and also to invite you to ask questions. And please feel free to put those questions in the chat and I will answer them as they come in. I've also had a few people have sent me questions in advance, so when the time comes, I'll be happy to answer those. But to start with, for the first 5 or 10 minutes, I just want to share with you how we're navigating this evolving reality of the pandemic and the shifts we are making, especially as a live theater, and what that means for our work. So once again, I know sometimes people join us late. This is Aaron Henney, Artistic Director of Theater Dybbuk. I'm taking the first few minutes to give a kind of 7 months in check-in about the company, what we're doing, where we're headed, and then to invite you to ask questions. You can really ask me anything related to the company and what we're doing. So the first thing is I just want to look back. Back in March, Theater Dybbuk was planning our show Breaking Protocols, which was due to open in August. We were in our process. We were having physical development meetings, script development meetings in person, and looking again towards that August opening with the Philosophical Research Society here in Los Angeles. And when the shelter in place came down, we continued our development online, having regular script meetings, physical development where we would train online. Some of you got to experience those trainings here online as well with us. And we were still looking forward to hopefully having an August premiere. As with so many other people and organizations, we just didn't know how the pandemic was going to play out, how long this was going to last. Around June, it became clear that, of course, August was not going to be realistic. So we decided to postpone the show till October, still being hopeful that we could have a live in-person theatrical experience in 2020. As most of you know, it is now October. We are not doing a show. And so we've decided to postpone the show till summer 2021. And full transparency, we all know we are seeing how this pandemic evolves. And our hope is that summer 2021, we can still gather in person indoors. We'll be able to by then, but we just don't know yet. So we're working towards that, but we don't know for sure if that's going to be possible. So how have we been navigating that? What pivots are we making to address that? One is this, pre-pandemic, we weren't doing regular talks online, and now we're doing them in a number of forms here directly on our page. I'm doing talks on a Facebook page called Jewish Live every other week that we simultaneously broadcast here, where we're really sharing process with you. That's new. They're also all available on our website now, so people can find these talks and chats in an ongoing manner. Two is that we have been continuing our trainings online and our script development meetings. So we still have script development meetings. We are continuing to develop the show, even if it's in this physically distanced format. Three is that we've done a number of in-process readings of our work online, where we're not saying we're presenting a whole show to you, but we're sharing snippets of Breaking Protocols and what's coming, and partnered with organizations around California, soon enough with one in Canada, actually, where audiences get to hear bits of the show and get to ask us questions. We've also been in our education work doing a lot of teaching still online, actually throughout North America, because we're able to reach people actually, across geography. And that's exciting that some places that maybe previously we couldn't have flown to or weren't able to bring us out, we're actually engaging with leaders and educators across the US and into Canada. So that's a lot of fun, and it's been great to connect with people in that way. The biggest pivot is that since we are not since we're a live theater that does work in person, which right now is really challenging, we have embarked on doing audio work, doing podcast work. And what we are doing is we experimented with the form on the podcast Judaism Unbound. We produced, and they co-presented a 3-episode series called Bova Buch. That what we did was we took a 16th century Yiddish chivalric romance, so knights, princesses, etc., but written in Yiddish. And in English translation, we had actors perform selections from it, and then had a series of interviews with scholar Ari Jaffe-Berg, where we used this text to talk about what was going on in society at the time and the nature of power and assimilation. We used the text as an entry point to look at that world and hold a mirror up to our own. And because Theater Dybbuk operates on the kind of thesis that Jewish history is an entry point to have discussions about society in general, because of the way in which Jewish people have been in so many places in the world in different positions, we have decided now, using that idea, to continue to learn from what we did with Bova Buch. And soon enough, we are launching a podcast that we're affectionately calling the Dybbuk Cast, Dybbukcast, the Dybbuk Cast, where we will actually be featuring episodes of all sorts, some interviews, some scholarship, some performance, but we're really going to be focusing on using creative artistic texts from throughout Jewish history, combined with interviews with scholars, to again speak about the forces at play in the societies in which those texts were created, and to hold a mirror up to our own world and ask questions of how we operate here and now. And those are each episode is going to include performed read work by actors from Theater Dybbuk and interviews with scholars and experts to really help us see our world. And it's going to launch in November, with episodes coming out regularly for the foreseeable future. And what's really exciting is it gave us a chance to partner with organizations across North America. We have currently 7 partners who will be announced at a later date, who are co-presenting the work with us to help us serve and reach their communities, and so that we can really expand our reach. So what I'll say is this, before I pivot to any questions you may have, is we had to ask a hard question about who we are as a theater company if we currently can't present live theater. And it was very confronting from an identity perspective, right? That if form is function, if theater is in our name, what we do is who we are. We had to ask questions about, if we cannot do that in the same form, then who are we? And the deep questions about what is our purpose in the world. And we really started to acknowledge that our purpose was to illuminate complexity, to ask people to look at the forces at play in our societies, and to use theater to kind of push that conversation in a meaningful way. And I thought, if that's the purpose, maybe there's a way we could use the tools of theater, even if the form is different, to continue to fulfill on that purpose. And so for those who are thinking about their own pivots and their own changes, I just wanted to share our process of asking those questions to come up with an answer that allowed us to still produce and create and be in conversation with the world. So really excited to share with you this new podcast endeavor, the Dybbuk Cast. It'll be coming out in just a few weeks, along with some online resources with each episode, actually, where you can dive deeper, read articles, use some learning curriculum. And so more to come on that front. All right. Julie, did I cover our pivots pretty well?
I think so. Do you want to talk anything about, or say anything about the programs that we're continuing to do?
The programs meaning our education and such. Yeah, thank you. So the other thing for those of you who don't know, in addition to all of our theatrical work, and I mentioned this lightly earlier before, but I'll give more detail. We are fortunate to work in a variety of communities where we train leaders using storytelling and theatrical techniques for how to be better communicators, better collaborators, leaders in large nonprofits and companies. And we are continuing to do that work. We are actually even helping those leaders think about how they lead effectively in an online format, how they communicate effectively in this new world. And that's been really exciting. And we're even moving into working with new organizations. And so that's really great. We're doing various leadership training. We even are designing new opportunities depending on the needs of nonprofits and various companies. In addition, a lot of what we did as well pre-pandemic is we were doing a lot of training of educators in schools, religious schools, community organizations, of getting them to think about how they use exciting techniques and storytelling and theatrical techniques with their youth learners, how they go into the classroom. And we would get brought into schools, for those who don't know, to help educators learn how to use the techniques we offer so that students feel more connected to the topics. And we've really made a big pivot, which is we are now using those tools to help educators think about how they use this online format in an exciting way so their students feel connected and feel present and can learn effectively. And we've actually done work with more than 20 schools in 5 states, and we are continuing to be booked where we can do either one-off workshop events or we can do multi-session workshops to help educators navigate this new reality, because we know you're really working hard and we want to be able to help you and support you. So, here's the brief promo part. If you want to reach out and learn more about that, feel free to email us at info@theaterdybbuk.org and we can fill you in on that. So that's been an exciting piece of growth. Thanks, Julie.
Sure.
So I'm going to open it up. This is now the Ask Me Anything portion. And before I go to this, I just wanted to say, this partially was about, yes, sharing with you what we're up to and the pivots we're making. But again, I always think of this as a thought space also. It was, if you were at all struggling with how are you navigating this moment, I wanted to share that we, like I said earlier, got really curious about who we are and our purpose, and made sure that we were still doing work that fulfilled on that purpose and that impact, even as the form had to change. So if that's a point of inspiration for anybody, I just wanted to share the thinking behind it. So, all right, I'm going to open this up for if you have questions, if there's anything you want to know about the pivots we've made, where we've been over the last 7 months, about where we're headed as a company, about our approach. It really is an Ask Me Anything related to the company and its work. So I'm going to open it up. I have a few questions already, in the waiting room, so I'm ready to answer those if people are feeling shy or not immediately coming in. But let's give a moment. Julie, any comments or questions coming in?
No, I think you can take one of the ones you've already received.
Great. So let's see here. I'm going to look to the side because I have some good questions. So one question is about some practicals, which is, all of our full productions are developed internally. Do we see the possibility of producing other work? I love this question because I think that a lot of times people think of theater and they picture a certain model, right? They picture this 3 to 5 shows a season model. We're producing work that exists. We're maybe producing some new plays by various writers. That is one model of how theater is presented. That is not the model we use. We develop our work internally under my artistic leadership, meaning I'm taking the lead on the writing and creation, but in conversation with our ensemble. And we develop works, as I said, over a year to 2 years. And that's really our signature, actually, is that we are using a process internally with our artists to think about a topic and to bring up issues in our world. And so while I certainly value plays of all kinds, that's just not our model. We have a very specific voice and a very specific approach. Now, that being said, before the pandemic, we were thinking of expanding to doing some reimagining of perhaps, plays that existed previously that might be older from the Jewish perspective, or that speak to topics that intersect with our mission, or to hidden works that may not be as well known in the from Jewish history. And we were going to start exploring maybe trying to present 2 shows a year, one that was grown out of our process and one that used our process on a pre-existing work. Obviously, in the pandemic, we've had to shift that plan. But the podcasts, I think, are an interesting marriage of things, where we are using text we didn't create as an entry point to talk about society. So although the podcasts we're creating, the source text is actually something pre-existing. So that's a whole new thing for us in some ways. So even though actually many of our plays are adaptations of work that existed in some form. So I hope that answers that question. I'm going to go to another question unless any come up. Julie will just call out to me if anything does. Great. Question is, do we ever hold open auditions? Why or why not? This is great. So because we are an ensemble, as opposed to, auditioning for a play, in the past, we've had sometimes single auditions where, there's an actor that we've connected with or was recommended or that we are familiar with their work and wanted to bring them into a project, and we do hold auditions in that form. Open auditions, again, to be transparent, we were having a discussion about that pre-pandemic, which was asking, is it time to have more open auditions, obviously with parameters of what we're looking for, because it's always nice to expand the circle. To be honest, though, the challenge is that because we don't use that 3 to 5 show season model, the opportunities are fewer and far between, that in other words, we're doing one big project a year. Traditionally, the podcast is a shift, but one big project a year where there's a deep and long commitment, but the amount of opportunities are limited. So I also was very sensitive to wanting to be respectful to people auditioning for something, that what we could offer them might not be what they're looking for in terms of how often work might be available to them. So we are still processing post-pandemic what that reality might look like and how we continue to grow our community of artists while also respecting boundaries and needs. So I hope that answered the question from the person who asked. Great, I'm gonna shift to some other questions unless any arise right here on Facebook. So a question that came in prior was about kind of our approach, meaning our work, I'm paraphrasing the question, but our work is very particular stylistically. For anyone who's seen our shows, there's very dense, often monologue as opposed to dialogue. There's a lot of stylized or choreographed movement as opposed to more naturalistic movement. And the question was, what's the desired effect? Why do that? And I've spoken about this in other talks, so I'll give a brief answer. One is, I want to say a word about monologue versus dialogue. Our shows do have dialogue as well. People do talk to each other, but they are heavily monologic, meaning, there's sometimes long streams of people speaking and expressing something. And this is partially based on the kind of belief that a lot of dialogue is actually two monologues. It's people, unfortunately, speaking past each other, coming from their own perspective and what they need and want, and the other person's coming from their perspective and what they need and want. And sparks happen when the collision of those needs and wants occurs. By breaking it apart, by having monologue, we really get to hear the way in which people are sometimes stuck in or attached to their perspective. And so that's a choice. That's a choice we've made. As for using this combination of speech and gesture or choreography, I would just say, I think that I can't help but think of dance, which is we go to dance and we understand that the physical body is expressing in maybe non-naturalistic, what we would call naturalistic ways, something deep about an emotional state or about a desire or about how something is being processed. And so by combining dense dialogue that's often intellectual with stylized movement, we are sometimes exposing the underneath. We are revealing what might be emotionally happening for somebody while they're saying one thing and doing another, or we're making larger that which they're expressing. If I'm repeating a gesture again and again, you might understand that I am actually showing you what the feeling really is that I'm already saying aloud. So those are some things about approach and about technique and why we're presenting work to you in the way we are. I have a few more questions from people, but I wanted to give a moment. If anyone wants to comment or has a question, happy to share with you. If not, I shall carry on. I'm open to any questions. Julie, just call out. Great. So I'm looking here at my questions that came in. Okay. Why is it called Theater Dybbuk? Thank you. So a Dybbuk, for those who don't know, is a figure in Jewish folklore that has died and is clinging to life by possessing a body. So what I love about this is, one, that as I just expressed, we do work that is fully embodied. And it's like the words and ideas are possessing you and being expressed in a variety of ways. So one is the name itself, the Dybbuk, speaks to something about the nature of our work. Two is this question. People all the time say, why is it called Theater Dybbuk? What does that mean? And so it provokes conversation, which I really love. It means that people aren't just assuming they think they know, oh, what this theater company is about. They have to get curious, and we get a chance to then communicate to them. Three is that because the work comes from Jewish history, but is meant to speak to a variety of issues in a more universal audience, I like the idea that for those who are familiar with Jewish folklore, this is familiar, this is known to them, and they go, oh, I think this comes from a Jewish perspective. But for those who don't, it is not alienating and doesn't feel exclusive. It causes, again, question or curiosity. Lastly is that there is a famous play called The Dybbuk, or A Dybbuk, that is one of the most famous pieces of Yiddish or Jewish theater. And also it's just a shout out to that history and that legacy. So I hope that answers that question. What prompted us or me to create this theater company? Do you feel you are addressing social or political or artistic issues that are not represented? It's a great question. So one is, I'll just give a little history. So for a few years, I'd been considering starting a theater company, recognizing that there was a particular take I was interested in as a lead artist, believed in ensemble work, believed in this combination of text and movement, wanted to ask some deep questions, and thought maybe others will go along for the ride. And then I started to recognize that, Jewish history was a really, and I'm Jewish, was a really unique way to enter that conversation. And also that in LA, which has such a robust Jewish population and also has so much diversity, that this dialogue that dances between particularity and universality would really belong here. As for the question about political, artistic, explorations, I think that I really believe in the value of an artistic conversation to move society along in terms of helping us to foster empathy, helping us to hold complexity. And I think that there is, a lot of great work out there doing that. But I think the more voices that are encouraging that through work, the greater our society becomes, and the richer it becomes. So I wanted to be part of that great conversation, and I thought there was a unique take on how to be part of that great conversation and that great project of making this a more empathetic world that can hold multiple truths and ask questions and be curious. So I hope that answers that question. Julie, any other questions coming in?
No, I think we can go ahead and wrap up.
Great. So I just want to close out and say, thank you for being with us. I just wanted to give you a little brief, download of what we've been doing and where we're headed, and answer a few of your really great questions about who we are as a company and our history. And thanks for being with us. I know we're coming up on a unique time, and elections coming. I hope you all stay well and as healthy as possible, and that we are, of course, encouraging people to vote and show up for our process. So thank you for being in that very important national process, and all my best to you during this time, and take care. Thanks for being with us. Have a good day.